So first, thanks obviously to all our sister companies. We all kind of work together on this stuff, and it just makes life so much easier. But I also wanted to give a really special thank you to Herman, aka HK, and I noticed he's here, along with Emily, who goes by Fire Serpent on Discord. They have spent the last couple of months in the middle, actually for Herman. Dude, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think like you were helping me out at like 3 a.m. your time. So he was literally like sleeping in his office to make sure he could kind of help develop this content and still make it to his work on time. So I just really appreciate the effort, folks. I do, this is never. I never want anyone to feel like, oh, Chris did everything. Chris does everything. Yeah, no, not even freaking close. Not even freaking close. And this is a great example of that. So Herman, Emily, very much appreciate it. And to everybody else, see them online. Please give them a pat in the back. So requirements today, pretty straightforward. You need access to a Windows system. You need access to the command prompt. Having administrative access would be helpful, but if you don't, you can still do about 95% of what we're going to cover. So what's up with this series? What is this? So we've done, as Keith mentioned, we've done Fireside Fridays internally within active countermeasures. And the concept has always been, hey, let's kind of raise each other up. Everybody knows stuff that other few people don't. So it's always a good idea to go through and kind of help each other out and kind of cut the curve on learning, because that just benefits everybody. Good example was, a couple of years ago, I did a class internally on Docker. Hey, this is Docker. This is how it works. This is what it does. And it was shortly after that we started converting everything to using Docker. Awesome. So this is an attempt to kind of extend that out to the public eye. The other thing I've noticed too is, especially in like the Ask Me Anything sessions, we all have gaps in our knowledge base. We all have these. We know the main part of the topic, but there's little missing pieces here and there. And what I wanted to do is kind of do a series of classes around filling in those missing pieces. I'm not trying to replace any of the training that takes place over on Anti-Siphon. What I'm trying to do is kind of create a good foundational class that will give you the tools you need to be able to walk into like an Anti-Siphon class or something else, and able to be successful as part of that. A lot of these, I'm going to try and keep the lab simple so that it's real easy to kind of set up and get going. I want to avoid hey, go download this 8 gig VM and figure out how to get it to work with your hypervisor. I want to try to avoid that. I want to make this something that folks can come hang out, during lunchtime on a Friday and do some pretty simple labs. I'm going to kind of primarily focus on network security to go through and do this. Why? Because this is kind of the glue that holds everything together. Regardless of whether you're blue team or red team, if something's not working, it's probably going to be something on the network. Or at the very least, the network becomes a troubleshooting point to go through and figure it out. So a lot of this stuff will kind of revolve around how do networks work and, how do packets flow back and forth and, how do we work with that stuff. But we're certainly going to be doing things on the host side as well. And I also want to make sure I kind of fill in some of the things that sometimes we wing it and there might be better ways to do it. Risk analysis is probably a good example of that, right? Like, when your boss comes to you and says, oh, hey, so what do we need to protect that server? Most of us kind of guess. Well, there's actually quantitative and qualitative acceptable methods to go through and do a true evaluation on that. That'll get you a little bit more closer to on target. So we'll be covering topics like that as well. So why focus on secure network design? I already went through and talked about this. Best practices, yeah, definitely, Eric. We're going to hit some of those as well. But today we're going to start kind of simple, and we're going to start just by working with stuff on the Windows command line. So what I want you to do is just open up a Windows command prompt, preferably with administrative access. So the way to do that is drop a copy of the icon on your desktop, right-click on that, and then go through and excuse me, then go through and select run as administrator. It'll pop up and say, hey, this wants to run as administrator. Go in and tell it, yes, I did that on purpose. It's okay. It's okay to go through and let that run. And then once you do that, you should be sitting at a command prompt in pretty good shape. Now let me get mine up and running here too. There we go. There it is. There it is. So all I did was, right click, run as administrator, and bang, this kind of puts me here. So just a quick kind of description of where we are, right? So we're in the Windows System 32 directory. So directories can be kind of nested underneath each other. Think of this as like a tree with branches, right? So the C drive is kind of like the main core of that tree. And then all the directories underneath it are branches. And on all of these branches, we can go through and we can save files. So we can go in, and if I type in something like dir, that'll show me whatever files happen to be located within the system. What I'm going to do for a lot of these is I'm going to work in the temp directory. So if you type in cd space ... that navigates you up one spot. If I type it again, that'll get me all the way up to the root of the C drive. And then if I do a dir here, I can see what files and directories are located at this location here. And notice I get a directory named temp. So the way to go through and create it is just mkdir and then the name of the directory that you wanted to create. So if I wanted to create like a temp2, I could go through and do that. And now when I go in and do my listing, you can see I've got a temp and a temp2 directory here now. Great. I'm going to move into temp just to be in an area without any files so I don't accidentally break anything. Now, one of the things, if you've kind of moved back and forth between Windows and Linux, or if you've worked with Linux at all, one of the things we like to take advantage of a lot is the ability to go in and use autocomplete. So autocomplete is just simply the ability, can we get the text a little bigger in the video? I can try. I already tried expanding it, but I got to leave it small enough that like stuff still fits on the screen. Let me go up one level here. There we go. See if that makes it a little bit more legible for folks. And I'll go full screen, but I want to make sure that if you could let me know in the channel if that's like, sometimes Zoom cuts off the last line. So can you see C:temp below that? Looks good. Awesome. All right. So this should give you a little bit of a bigger font to work with. This should make it a little bit easier to go through and kind of work with this stuff. So yeah, so we started talking about autocomplete. What's that? So autocomplete is just the ability to go through and type out the rest of a command. So for example, if I type in the letter N and then hit tab, make a liar out of me. It's just okay. See, even folks like me still learn stuff on occasion. Why isn't that working?
Is it just PowerShell that has autocomplete?
No, it's not just PowerShell.
Okay.
It should be available on the prompt as well. And in fact, I ran through and tested it earlier, and it worked just fine. It's almost like I don't have a path statement. Yeah, I do. Something's up with my shell. Let me close that. Let me run that again. Let me try it here. Here we go. Okay. So I'm back in my temp directory. If I type the letter N, oh, this should be showing me stuff in my path too.
Capital N?
Yeah, that shouldn't matter. That
Okay.
shouldn't matter. It maybe just want to only works in PowerShell. Yeah, no, it should, yeah, say it is working here. Okay, so okay, so here's what I'm running into. A little bit of a brain fart here. So autocomplete with Linux looks at your path. So it'll start in your path statement. So if I type like the letter N on Linux and then hit tab, it looks at my path statement and says, oh, okay, let me start let me show you everything that has to do with N that's located, in your path. With Windows, it looks at the local directory. So the reason it's working here and it wasn't working in the temp directory was because in the temp directory, I didn't have any files that were named N. I got to be in a directory that has that file information in it. The other thing that's a little bit different about autocomplete with Windows is that with Linux, when I typed in N, if I hit tab key twice, it'll show me all of the N possibilities and it won't show me anything more. Well, if I continue to hit tab on Windows, you'll notice it's just going to sit here and keep cycling through all the possibilities that start with the letter N. So it'll actually try to give you the full command. Is that better? Is that worse? That's totally up to you. It's totally up to you as far as like, what you think is a good idea and what's not type of thing. Um, I can also use my up arrow and my down arrow to scroll through commands that I've typed in the past. So for example, I just up arrowed to my CD space C colon / temp command, and now I can hit enter on that. This works a little bit differently versus Linux as well. With Linux, when I hit the up arrow, it always goes back to the last command I typed. With Windows, if let's say I have 10 commands I've typed, and then I hit the up arrow and I go back to command number 5, the next time I hit the up arrow, it's going to try and pick up again at that point. It's going to try and pick up 5 commands back. So that's a little bit different than what you get on the Linux side as well. Wish there was more control in autocomplete. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think some of what Microsoft does on the command prompt is kind of from the perspective of we're going to do this just because people want something, but we're not going to put a whole lot of time or an effort into the whole thing. So if I type in dir, that's showing me, hey, I'm in an empty directory right now. That's perfectly fine. Excuse me. If I want to see what command line switches does dir support, I type in dir. Now we've got a couple of possibilities. This might be -H. Nope. This might be dash question mark. Nope. This might be \H. Nope. This might be / question mark. Oh, hey, look, that worked. So I did that probably in the reverse order that you want to. / question mark is a good place to start if you're looking for the online help. But any one of those 4 commands are a possibility when you're working with Windows stuff. It's not as consistent as like man space something if you were on the Linux side to get help with the command. It's going to be worked in as a switch, and it might be a /, it might be a dash, it might be an H, it might be a question mark. Go through all those 4 and you'll end up running into something that works for you. If I want to clear the screen, CLS will do that for me. So that'll get me back to having an open screen. If I want to look at the contents of a file, I have a couple of possibilities. First, let's create a file. Let's go in and create a real simple file. So I'm going to use the echo command for that. So with Linux, I need to put quotes around what I want to echo. With Windows, I don't. So I'm just going to type in echo, and then I'm going to type in the contents of what I want to put in the file. So I'm just going to say, this is just a regular file. Now, I need to tell it, where do I want to send that information? Well, I'm going to say greater than, and that tells me I want to redirect that information. Now, where do I want to redirect it? Well, I have to give it a file name to redirect it to. So the file I want to redirect it to is just foo.txt, just because, hey, foo is always something for me that if I see that, I know it's okay to delete it. In other words, foo is always kind of my scrap file names that I use. So anytime I'm in trying to clean something up, anything that is named foo, I know I can easily delete and it's not going to cause any problems. All right, so now I'm going to hit enter on this. Now, if I type my dir command again, hey, I have a file named foo.txt that's 30 bytes in size. And if I went through and counted, I'd probably have 30 characters in there. That's where my 30 bytes are coming from. Now, how could I view that file? Well, I have a couple of options. I could type in type, and I'm just going to type in FO and hit tab. and that'll fill in the full name for me. And see, there's my context right there. This is a regular file. I could also do more space foo.text. And if it's more, when I use the more command, if there's more than a page worth of information, it'll pause and wait for me to hit the space bar to be able to continue from there. More is kind of like the less command on Linux, but it's not quite as capable. You know, less has a lot more capability to it than more does. In fact, we can say more \, and here's all the different switches and capabilities that's built into the more command. Cool. Now, let's see, what else is fun? Oh, I know. So I'm going to cd back to the main directory, and I'm going to type in tree, T-R-E-E. Hit enter. Yeah, what's going by there? The tree command will show me a kind of a graphical outlay of everything that's located from this point on down. I can always point to something too if I want to, and I can also use more to kind of pause the screen as needed. So for example, I could say tree, C:\\, hey, I want to run the tree command from the root of the drive, and then I want to pipe that through more so that when I get a page worth of information, it pauses. And now when I hit enter, here is my directory structure, my whole system. The switches to include files or not include files have different choices. Sometimes having this kind of graphical layout of what everything looks like is a little bit easier for folks to go through and consume. Sometimes this makes it a little bit easier. You know, your mileage may vary. The nice thing is you can go in and you can kind of mess around with stuff. Now, let's take a look at our directory here again. Come on, we're done. All right. So if I say dir, that shows me I've got foo.text. If I type in dir/a, that'll give me any more, that'll show me any hidden files that are in this directory. And right now you can see there's no files that have the hidden attribute associated with it. However, one of the things that folks sometimes learn and forget, or maybe they don't learn, is that Windows uses a really weird file system that has a hidden section underneath it referred to as alternate data streams. So alternate data streams date back to when NT was first being created, and Microsoft wanted Apple computers to be able to save their files onto an NT system, right? Because Apple uses a meta file and then it uses a data file. So they needed a place to be able to store both of those pieces of information. So they created alternate data streams. The problem is alternate data streams is kind of turned into a great place to go through and hide file information. All right. So we use the echo command to create this file named foo.text, right? Let's go through and use the echo command again, only this time I'm going to say echo, this is a hidden file. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to redirect that into foo.txt, right? So this is the file name that's sitting in this directory already, but I'm going to append, don't hit enter yet. At the append to that, do a colon, and then come up with a new file name, like hidden stuff.txt. There we go. That's a good one. And now I'm going to hit enter. Okay, we didn't get an error, right? So it looks like it wrote that somewhere. Let's run dir again. We still don't see it. And look, my file hasn't changed in size. It's still sitting at 30. Let's try dir/a. Show me hidden stuff. Well, no, it still doesn't show up there. Try this switch, dir-r. Oh, look at this. Now I'm seeing a second resource in that directory that has kind of a weird name to it. What's this? This is an alternate data stream file. So this is something I've actually appended to that existing file and hidden it underneath. Notice, you know, looking for hidden attributes doesn't show it. Looking at the file, looking for a file size change doesn't show it. So this allows you to save multiple files underneath an existing file that doesn't immediately become apparent. Let me show you what I mean by that. So if I go to File Explorer, and you can do this too, or you don't have to, doesn't matter. But here's my File Explorer. And now if I go to the temp directory, well, I can see foo.txt. I can't see the hidden stuff file. So File Explorer is not compatible with the alternate data streams format that Microsoft uses on their own file system. Oh my God, sometimes you can't make this stuff up, right? So so File Explorer doesn't give me any way to actually be able to go in and view that file. I can, however, see it doing a dir-r, like you just saw. So if I ever need to get in and actually see that stuff, that may be one way to do it. So how do I view the context of this file, right? So I've got this file, hiddenstuff.txt, and the $ data at the end tells me it's a hidden data stream. How do I see what's in there? Well, let's try some of the commands we've worked with. Let's say type foo.txt, what did I name it? Hidden stuff.txt. No, that doesn't work. Type isn't compatible. Oops, I hate it when that happens. Let's try the more command. So we'll try more foo. Now notice also I'm hitting tab. I can't tab through anything in the alternate data streams. So tab is not compatible with alternate data streams. So I'm going to have to manually type out the rest of this. Hidden stuff.txt. Cannot access that file. Huh. That's an interesting error, right? So what if we run the more command, but we shovel back that file instead? What does that do? Oh, hey, look, now we can actually see the context of that file. What about Notepad? So if I say Notepad foo.txt, here's what just opened up on my screen. So this is showing me that regular file. Let's close that up. And now I'm going to hit my up arrow key, and I'm going to say colon hidden stuff.txt. Oh, look. So Notepad's compatible. Type is not compatible. More is only sort of compatible if you mess with it. This is a great place to hide its stuff. This is a great place to be able to go through and kind of hide things on a system that you don't want people to find. Now, what if you want to kind of search your drive for this stuff? dir/s, I want to do my checks recursively for the whole system, -r, show me those hidden data streams. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pipe this through. If I just run that command, let's run that through more. Actually, I got to go up one. There we go. So if I just run that command, that just starts listing out all my files and directories. Okay, cool. But what I want to do is I only want to see the alternate data streams. So what I'm going to do for that is rather than print out everything like we were just doing, I'm going to use the find command to go in and identify a specific string of information that I want it to look for. So I'm going to say find -e, and then I get to define what it is I want to look for. Well, let's look for that colon $data that was showing up at the end anytime we had a hidden data stream. And then I'm going to go through, and I almost pumped it through less because I'm used to working on Linux, but we're going to pump it through more. And let's see what happens. Invalid data switch. Oh, thank you for that. What's it? Which one's invalid here? What did I get wrong? Dir -s -r. Yeah, that's right. Oh, sorry. I had this command wrong. str. Find str. That's right. It's not find, it's find str. That should do it. And then this will pause for a second because it's going to wait until it gets a full screen worth of information before it shows me anything. Come on, you can do it. I can hear my drive thrashing. There we go. So here's all the stuff that has that associated with it. Notice we got a ton of zone identifiers here. We've got a bunch of PNG files. That looks like it's cached PNG information. What's all this stuff? So have you ever noticed that when you download, let's say like a spreadsheet, off of the internet. And then you go to open it up with Excel. Excel will pop up and say, hey, you got this from the internet. I don't know if this is something, are you sure you want to trust this? I'm only going to open it read only. Well, how does it know you got that off the internet? Well, the way it knows it got off the internet is that there is a alternate data stream associated with that file that said, hey, this came from an untrusted source. Huh. Well, what if I wanted the person to think that spreadsheet is trustworthy? Is there a way to fool the system into that? Yeah, there is. Go into this file and change it to a trusted source. And now Excel will happily open that file up, not give any warnings, automatically kick off scripts or, whatever is embedded inside of that spreadsheet. And then you're off to the races after that. So if you wanted to, so this command here, I'll throw this into Discord. I'll throw this into Discord, just so everybody's got it. So if you wanted to kind of play around with where are there existing alternate data streams on your system, this is the command to go through and do that. This will go through and find that stuff for you. So that's kind of a fun one. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's it for file system stuff for now. Let's play with another one. Oh, I know. So let's I'm gonna clear the screen here. Go back to temp, CLS to clear the screen, and let's play with Task Manager. TASKMGR. So now spelling matters, Chris. TASKMGR. There we go. That's how you spell Task Manager. And then once you do, you should get another graphical window that opens up that looks something like this. So this is designed to go through and kind of show you what's running on your system, right? The default system, the default screen is showing me my running processes. It's telling me that Zoom is using a moderate amount of power, whereas PDF Pro is using a high amount. Now that it went to high, then very high, and it's going back and forth. I'm sure that'll change as I change stuff going on the screen, but you get the idea. Here are my active processes. Here are my processes sitting in the background. So anytime you need to go through that stuff, Task Manager is the way to go. But what I really like about this tool is this Startup tab right here. So if I click on the Startup tab, this shows me everything getting started up on my system, regardless of whether it's in the registry, if it's in if someone creates like an autoexec.bat file, which Windows is still backwards compatible with because of DOS, and launches stuff out of that, that'll show up on this screen too. So this is kind of cool. And what's nice about it is you can see you can disable things, right? I've got a bunch of stuff like Office. Don't start that up automatically. It's start. So if I right click on it, I'll have an enable or disable option, depending upon what the current state is. Teams is currently enabled. I could say, nope, don't start up Teams on boot. So this allows you to easily be able to go in and kind of pick and choose what it is you want to start up and what you don't. So that's kind of a nice capability to go through and use. But this launches a graphic utility. Sometimes we kind of need to stay at the command line. For that, another command you can use is task list. Let me pump that through more so you can see the whole thing. What did I do wrong? Oh, there we go. Notice this, the top of the task list, supported switches. What does that mean? Well, I'm open nothing with .spider extensions. Yeah. I completely agree, dude. Spider, or if you're in Florida or anything with a Python extension. Yeah, that's it. So yeah, what's that stuff up there? Well, that stuff up there is I can run this against my own local system, or if I have the creds, I can run this against remote systems as well. So if I need to be able to log into remote systems and collect information about what processes may or may not be running, Task List is an awesome tool to be able to go through and do that. So I can see locally, I can see remotely. We're not going to be logging into a remote system. in this. But if that's something you want to play around with, feel free to go through and do it. But if all I do is just run task list without any switches, that'll give me a list of all my running processes that are on this machine, which is kind of fun. So again, if I was looking for, let's say I ran across a file that I'm suspicious about, and I wanted to see, is it running on any of my other systems? I could use task list to systematically reach out to each of those systems, get a list of the running tasks, to use find str to see, is this process one of those processes that are running on that system? And that'd be a very quick way to go through and figure out what's there and what's not. If I want to look at sub-processes, I can go in and say task list dash svc, I believe is the command. And this shows me any sub-processes that are associated with any of the processes that are running. Now, again, I can use find, right? So we didn't have any pop up on this main screen. But instead of paging through, let's go in and use find to go in and look for that. And I'm going to say lsass.exe. Yeah, that's it. That should give me something. There we go. So what this is telling me is that this process has launched a number of child processes as well. So I can see what's causing things to go through and get launched if I wanted to go through and do it that way. So I've got some capabilities to be able to look at local processes and remote processes with this as well. Kind of moving on to if I need to like audit, let's say network stuff, ipconfig is the tool for that. So if I just type in ipconfig, that goes through and that'll list out some adapter information. If I wanted to make sure this pauses, just pump it through more. And now it'll get a full page worth of information and then it'll stop from there. Hopefully you like my domain, honestimnotevil.com. Really, I'm not. I know it seems that way sometimes, but honest, I'm not. But this will show each of my adapters. Some of these, like this one here, is part of my VirtualBox setup. So that's not a real network adapter per se. It's not like it's a physical device plugged into my computer. That's just a virtual adapter that's used anytime I have systems running on VirtualBox. Oh, and thanks for that clarification, Bill. Oh, why find versus find str? Bill, I am impressed. You knew the answer to a Windows question. I am like totally thrilled, dude. That is awesome. Bill tries to avoid Windows as much as he can. So that's why it's kind of a thing. But yeah, I've got all my interface information here. If I do an ipconfig/all, that'll add in some additional information about what's going on. So again, if I kind of need to see what's going on with my network interfaces, which ones are working, which ones aren't, I can go in and I can use this. The problem with this command, though, is that it's not showing me what my interface numbers are. Some tools, so like let's say I wanted to use, I don't know, this Ethernet adapter, right? Let's say I'm running a sniffer or something and I need to specify this interface. How do I do that? Well, some tools want you to specify the interface number that's associated with that interface. Well, ipconfig doesn't print that out for you. So how do you find that? Well, there's another command we can use called netstat. And netstat has all sorts of really awesome information you can extract out of it. But if I say -rn and then pump that through more, one of the things this will show me is all of my network interfaces. Here's that killer gigabit Ethernet interface and what the interface number is that's associated with it. So that's that number right at the beginning of the line. This is the MAC address that's associated with that interface. So if I wanted to run my sniffer and I wanted to make sure it's listening on this interface, I could specify interface number 21. So ipconfig doesn't give you that, but you can get that information out of netstat. You'll also notice that this is showing me my routing table. So this is showing me, what networks does my system know about and how is it going to try to go about getting to that network. So let's see, 56. Yeah, so like 192.168.56, it's saying it's got to go through 56.1 to get there. That's off of one of my interfaces. 69 is the main local network. So you get the idea. Active routes. This gets into like IPv6. the routing table, although I don't do a lot with IPv6 on my local network, but that shows up under this information as well. So I can get some pretty cool information about what's going on the network out of this, which is kind of nice. The other thing, let's see, what else can I pull out of there that's fun? Oh, actually, back to IP config for a second. So one of the other things, I've run into this a couple of times now. Sometimes you kind of want to know what DNS records are being cached on your system, right? I want to display them. I might want to delete a particular entry. How do I go about doing that? You use the ipconfig command for that one as well. So if I go in and I say display DNS, and then we'll pump that through more, here is all of the DNS records that are being cached on my system currently. So my record name this is what they tried to look up, and then the PTR or the A record is going to give me whatever the answer was to these. These are all PTR queries, and we know that because it's listing the IP address backwards, and it's got this domain in address ARPA. Anytime you see that, you know a PTR type of query was performed. But if I scroll through this a little bit and get past, oh, I had one and I lost it. Let's get past. Yeah, my system does a lot of PTR record queries. I'm trying to look for one that's like an A record, just so we have that to show. Here we go. This is showing as an A record. Oh, well, except it's IPv4 ARPA that it's looking for. Yeah, that's not helpful. Come on, here we go. Zoom. Oh, no, that was a PTR record query too. Yeah, so it's showing me my query types. I know I got A record queries in here. Oh, and I hate the fact that I can't arrow up. Can I scroll back? No, I can't scroll back. Yeah, freaking Windows, give us a page up and page down with more, please. It makes stuff like this a whole lot easier. Here we go. Here's a quad A query that took place. Here we go. Here's something. So what this is telling me is that my system needed to get to mozilla.cloudflare-dns.com, and then here was the A record answer that came back in response to that question. Quick question. It came in a little late. Why would you use CMD over PowerShell Windows command line? So you should work with whatever makes your life easier. What I'm trying to avoid by kind of doing it this way is not having to teach everybody about PowerShell and how to use it. I'm trying to kind of keep this as simple as possible for now. We'll come back and we'll kind of dig back into Windows command line stuff later. But the commands I'm going through and kind of covering today, these are the commands that as we start doing labs later, or if you're doing labs as part of other classes, when you run into problems and you're trying to troubleshoot what's actually going on, these are the commands that can kind of help bail you out, right? Like if you're in a lab that says, oh, hey, run this packet sniffer, run, whatever, and try and sniff the local network and see if you can't see some traffic. Well, and you're not seeing any traffic, well, maybe it's not listening on an active interface. And how do you get a list of interfaces to know where to specify it? We went through and we kind of covered that as part of the netstand command. So that's why we're going through and kind of talking about this stuff. Now, if I just want to see, if I don't need the whole thing, if I just want to know like what's being queried, right? I don't need the query and the answer. I just want to see what's been queried. I can actually go through and I can use find for that. So I can go in and I can say, let me pull back that command. We're going to say display DNS, right? Same command we ran before, and not hit the enter key, Chris. Pipe that through. The find command, which allows us to go in and search for text, and the text we're going to look for is this right here, record name, because that's what was being queried. So I'll paste that in, and now that'll give me a list of all the queries that have been performed by my system. So if I ever need to know, when I'm trying to get to array 621.prod.do.dsp.mp.microsoft.com, what IP address is it going to as part of that? I can go in and look at that. If I'm running a sniffer or something and I see, hey, my system is connecting to, 17.253.21, 201. Why is it? Well, I can go in and I can search this information to see what fully qualified domain name was queried that resulted in that IP address being returned back in again. So again, it's a good way to be able to go through and just kind of troubleshoot what's going on with the whole thing. Jumping back to the netstat command again, One of the other things you kind of need to figure out sometimes is, do I have any open listening ports? So if I go in and say netstat-an, that'll show me what's going on with network traffic on my system. So there's a couple of things to kind of take a look at here. So this first line says TCP, and it shows all zeros for an IP address. What does that mean? There's two ways that an application can get bound to the IP stack. It can get bound to a specific interface, or it can get bound to all of them. So for example, down here, this is bound to just the loopback interface, 127.0.0.1. That's it. Any other network interface that's on my system, port 5354 will not be open and listening. It's only going to be on the loopback interface. But port 135, because it's specified as 000, that means every interface. So any interface I plug into this computer is going to immediately start listening on port 135, 445, 903, 913, 1844. Gotta love Windows. We've got all sorts of open ports here that it's going to go through and listen on. So anytime you see the state is listed as listening, that means that that's an open port that's capable of servicing connections. Where it can service them from depends on the network interface. If it's all of them, well, that person could potentially be anywhere. If it's on the loopback interface only, well, only the local system can go in and actually communicate with that. Now notice we have some entries here that are listed as established. What that means is that's actually an active session running right now. So my system is talking to itself between TCP ports 1844 and 49962. Why? Well, that's the easiest way to go through and exchange information between applications, right? If I have my application set up so that it talks over the network, well, now I can talk to that other application, whether it's on the same local system or if it's off on a remote system, just by specifying a different target IP address. So if I want to see, what active sessions do I have going and where, this will go through and this will show me that. So if I go in, I'm going to hit page. I just want to see if we have any other states listed here. Close wait. Here we go. Synsent. Actually, yeah, there's a good one. Synsent. What does that mean? That means that at the time this command had run, a SYN packet was sent out, but we're waiting for the reply to come back to see if that port is actually open and listening. So when you grab that, it tends to be kind of quick, meaning that that 3-packet handshake, with which this is a part of, doesn't last very long. What does close wait mean? Close wait means that we've gone through the TCP 3-packet handshake. We've gone through our established state to exchange information back and forth. And one side of the connection has said, hey, I've sent you all the data I plan to send you. So I'm not going to be sending you any more data anymore. Therefore, I am ready to close my side of the connection. And we're waiting for the other side to finish sending data in order to be able to go through and close this whole thing out. Now, we'll get into this more when we talk about firewalls. But one of the places where, seeing this type of stuff can be super helpful is when you're trying to troubleshoot problems with stateful firewalls. Stateful firewalls use timeouts to kind of decide is a connection dead or not. And one of the things you'll run into is that those timeouts are drastically different when you're in an established state versus when you're in like a half closed state, like a closed wait state. So the timeout, the firewall may be willing to wait an hour to see if any additional traffic goes through while it's in an established state. But once you get in a closed wait session, it might only wait like 10 seconds. And if it doesn't see any traffic in 10 seconds, it may actually just kill the session. So if one side's still trying to send the data that it needs to, because the first half of the connection went into a closed wait state, the second half of the connection is still trying to send over all sorts of data. Well, if there's only a 10-second window before the firewall will decide, yeah, that connection's dead, I'm just going to toss that entry. You're far more likely to get data transfers that get interrupted. So, a firewall may say, oh yeah, the state table timeout is an hour. Well, usually what they're talking about is in an established state. In the other states, those timers tend to be a lot smaller, and that tends to be where you go in and run into problems. And we'll get into that more as we go through and kind of talk things through. When you get into so yep, here's my IPv6 stack and the ports that are being opened as part of that. Now with UDP, notice it doesn't have a state listed, right? Why? Well, UDP is stateless. So what this is saying is, hey, UDP 500 is there. It's, people can try and talk to it, but because it's connectionless, because it doesn't have any states, there's no states that actually can be tracked as part of that. So that's what we got there. Let's see. Yep. So there's more UDP stuff. Then we get into the IPv6. Dubu was saying, yep, connectionless protocol. Absolutely. UDP is a connectionless protocol. So we were talking about firewall stuff, and most endpoints have some sort of firewall on it. What if I want to go in and see the firewall configuration on the local system? Well, I could go through the graphical interface for that, right? I can go in and, there's a nice GUI firewall management setup for that. But what if I want to be able to record that information and easily write it out to a file? Well, it'd probably be easier to go through and do it at command line. What if I want to do it on a remote system? Well, again, it might be easier to go through and do it on the command line. So this is where NetSH comes in. So NetSH is an awesome tool. You can do so many cool things with this. I highly recommend you spend some time, just even if you just kind of breeze through and then Google things that look interesting to you. There's all sorts of fun stuff that you can go through and you can use with NetSH, like manage the local firewall that's on this local system, or notice up here, I can connect to remote systems and manage the firewalls on them if I need to as well. So that's kind of cool. So how do I use NetSH to see what's going on with my firewall setup? Well, if I say NetSH, spelling matters, Chris, and that was ADV short for advanced firewall. So I want to go in and work with that context. Now, if I'm ever not sure what commands to use where and when, I can always go in and just say \question mark again. And this will show me what my next valid commands are after this. So we want to see what the firewall settings are. So I'm going to use the show command. But notice one of my options is set. I can actually change firewall rules at this point here. I can also go in and change the default policy if I want to go through and do that. So I'm going to hit my up arrow, and now I'm going to say show. I want to show firewall rules. \question mark. What do I want to show? Well, what are my options? Well, my options are current profile, global, private, blah, blah, blah. Let's look at all profiles. That way I'll get everything, right? So notice what I'm doing. I'm just kind of stepping through, and each time I get a new command line switch, I'm just using \question mark to go through and see what are my options at that point there. So I'm going to say all profiles. Yeah, I think that's spelt right. And then I could say \question mark. And notice I got some additional options here. I could go through and I could look at state. I could look at the default policy. I can see whether logging's set up or not. Or I can try just running it at this point here. And now this will go through and this will show me what all my policies are. So what this is saying is if I'm logged into a domain, this is what the firewall policy looks like. If I'm on a private network, like my home network, this is what the firewall policy looks like. If I'm on a public network, here's what it looks like. Now you may notice, yeah, I've got everything shut off. That's probably not a good thing. Hopefully yours is going to go in a different state. Yeah, Canton Never is saying, yep, NetSH advanced firewall set all profile state off. Yes, you can do that. What I like to do, or actually, and what I need to do on this system that I haven't done yet, is I just create an icon on my desktop that says one is labeled shields up, the other one is labeled shields down. And what that allows me to do is when I want to have the firewall running on this system, click the shields up icon, and that just goes through and runs a set command that turns on firewalling. When I need to shut that firewall off for some reason, click the shields down, icon, and I can go through and do it that way. So I just haven't gotten around to doing it on this particular system yet. So I don't have those icons set up. But yeah, you can use the set command to go in and make those changes. I'm confused. What is that shield icon? So what I'm talking about is I create an icon, right? And so when you go in and you create an icon, it says, you know, what command do you want to run? Well, I say I want to run the netsh advanced firewall command, and I want to set my firewall to an on state or an off state. It can be one or the other. So that's kind of what I'm talking, you know, and when you also need to name that something, right? So I could name it firewall on, firewall off. Um, you know, a little bit of a Star Trek geek, so I just name it shields up, shields down, or shields on, shields off, you know, whatever, something along those lines. But you can make so these commands that we're running, you can actually go through and just create an icon that runs the command with these switches. And you know, that way, instead of having to open a command prompt and then type this whole thing in manually, you just click in an icon to be able to go through and run it that way instead. That makes life a whole lot easier to be able to go through and do. So yeah, I can go in and I can look at my profiles. I can change them if I want to. Let's see what else is good. Oh, so if you want to get a look at what's on my local network, right? Like, are there any other hosts connected up to my own local network here? The command for that is ARP. So ARP stands for Address Resolution Protocol. This is systems communicating at layer 2. If I say -A, that'll show me everything that this system knows about. And I'm going to pump that through the more command. And now when I do, I get output kind of like this. So this is showing me, okay, off of this interface, here's all the systems I know about. Off of this interface, here's what I know about. Off of that interface, here's what I know about. So this is broken out on a per interface basis. Now that first interface is my active interface. That's the one I'm actually using right now. So notice it knows about 69.1, and here's the MAC address that's associated with that system. Notice it's listed as dynamic. What does that mean? There are two different ways to generate ARP entries, static or dynamic. Static means it's pre-programmed in, right? So if I look at an static example, right? This one here, if it's going to the broadcast address, you know, that's going to be all Fs. That's a static entry. That's something that, you know, gets pre-programmed into the system. This is a multicast address that Microsoft uses to talk to other Microsoft systems. That gets statically programmed in. So that'll be there all the time, regardless. Anything listed as dynamic, like this one, this is something that the system learned on its own. So at some point, my system tried to send a packet for whatever reason to 69.1, and the local computer said, I don't know where that system is. I don't know what MAC address it's using. So I'm going to send an ARP packet and say, hey, who's using 192.168.69.1? Please come back and tell me. And when that system responds to me, I'll get to see its MAC address. And then I'll create a cache entry for it, just like you see here. So anything listed as dynamic, so from that entry all the way down to this one, these will eventually age out and go away. And they'll just get dropped off of this list. And let's say one of these systems gets shut off, or I just stop talking to it for whatever reason, this entry will actually end up getting removed. Dynamic entries can also get messed with. We'll talk about that a little bit more as we go through. So like I can see, you know, this .209 system. What if that's like a local host that I need to be able to communicate with for some reason, right? Let's say that's like my database server or something. And my database interface isn't working. And I want to know, is that system online or not? How can I figure it out? Well, one way might be to use this ARP command like we just did. And if you've got an ARP cache entry, at some point that system was responding to you. This doesn't tell you if it's accessible right now. This tells you it was accessible over whatever the timeout period is for the ARP cache, which tends to be 2 minutes on most systems. So all this tells me is it was reachable at least up to 2 minutes ago. It doesn't necessarily tell me is it reachable right now. If I want to see if it's reachable right now, the command for that is ping. So I could say ping 192, 168, 69, 209. And now when I run that, I get this output here. Okay, what's this telling me? This is telling me that this ping command went through and sent a packet to that IP address, and it was able to get a response back. It sent a it sent a packet that was 32. The response it got back was 32 bytes in size. It took 2 milliseconds to get a response from this system, and the TTL set in the packet was set to 64. We'll talk more about what that means a little bit later. But what this is telling me is that system is currently accessible. And then down the bottom, what I get is I get a little summary of what went on. So this is telling me, hey, we sent 4 packets. We got back 4 packets. Hey, that's a good sign, because sometimes you'll send 4, you'll only get back 2. That tells you you've got something weird going on the network. And there's 0% packet loss. That's what we want to say. This is also saying that, hey, round trip time is down around the minimal I'm capable of measuring, right? This tool won't really report anything faster than a millisecond. And hey, if your connectivity is a millisecond or less, you're in good shape. You're not going to have to worry about that. It's when it's over a longer period of time. So if I want to know if that system is reachable, I can use ping. Now, ping will tell me, is that system online? What it will not tell me is the database server running? Is the web server running? I can't get that information off of ping. So this is just like a simple connectivity check. So let's say I tried to ping something across the internet, and for whatever reason, I couldn't get to it, right? Let's say I was trying to ping www.google.com, and this should respond, and it does. But let's say for some reason, Google wasn't responding. I wasn't getting a response back from that. Well, there's 2 possibilities at play here, right? If this normally works, if I could normally ping Google, and now all of a sudden I can't, the problem could be on my local network. Maybe my router's down. Maybe my ISP internet link is down. Maybe something's wrong with the backbone on the internet. Maybe there's something wrong with the Google server. It could be any of those things. The tool I can use to go through and kind of check this out is called traceroute, or is short trace RT. What this does, the output's going to be a little bit different than what we saw with ping. Now, let me describe what the difference is. So with ping, this just came back and said, hey, to get to that remote server and come back again, it was taking 9 milliseconds to go through and do that. Notice the output from trace RT is a little bit different. It's showing me a bunch of different lines. In order to get to Google, I got to go through multiple routers, right? So I got to be able to go through the router that leads to my ISP. There's probably a couple of different routers at my ISP I'm going to have to go across. I got to traverse the backbone of the internet. I got to get into Google's environment. I might have to cross a couple of routers there, and then I'll eventually get to whatever server is acting as www.google.com. So there's a bunch of routers along the way. Any one of those could be the potential problem as to why I can't talk to www.google.com right now. What traceRT does for me is it sends a packet to wherever it is I want to go, right? So it's sending packets to www.google.com. But see this TTL value? The TTL value tells the network how much longer this packet is allowed to stay out on the network before it needs to throw it away and return an error. If this number ever drops to 1, that tells that receiving system, hey, I can't forward this packet anymore. The TTL's already dropped to 1, so I'm just going to send an error packet back to the host that was trying to do that transmission. So what traceRT does is it artificially deflates that TTL value to 1 and then tries to send the packet to Google. Well, when it does that, it gets to this first device, and this first device says, hey, sorry, TTL expired. You can't get there. Well, when it returns those error packets to me, I get to see that system and where it's located. Now trace RT will set that TTL to 2. It'll do it again. The next system respond. Then it'll set the TTL to 3. The next system respond. It'll set it to 4, set it to 5. Notice here, maybe I had a system that was having trouble responding. More likely there's some sort of filtering on there that tries to filter out its ability to try and send any type of error messages like this. But notice we did eventually get to where we were going, and we were trying to get to www.google.com, but the IP address that we ended up at, this is actually the name of that system. So you can actually see, what's buried under CNAMEs running this type of command on occasion too. Let's see. I saw a bunch of comments go by. Oh, hey, Chuckles Ahern is here. Awesome. I've known Charles since like forever. Charles has been doing this stuff as long as I have. Let's see. For those that want to do PCAP captures natively in newer Windows versions, check out Packetmon. You probably already knew that. Yep. So I knew that. People probably didn't. So thank you for tossing that one in there. And yeah, that is a Windows native tool to be able to go through and do packet capturing. And I will get into that packet captures and what they are and what it means and how to read them in a much later class. DNS versus IP is always fun. Yeah, and you can always do all sorts of like cool things with it as well. One of the things you have on any type of system is a host file. And I can get into this in a later class if folks want to. But when you try to get somewhere on the internet, before your system checks DNS, it checks that host file to see if there's an entry for that. And what there are services up on GitHub. If anybody has a favorite, feel free to kind of post it into Discord. But if you can download their host file that will filter out all of the damn Bannerat sites. So you can load up a host file that doesn't know how to get to add.doubleclick.net anymore. So now when your system tries to get to that network or tries to get to that host, it checks the host file, and the host file says, oh, that's it, 127.0.0.1. In other words, yeah, I'm not going to let you look up the correct IP address. And that can actually dramatically reduce the amount of ad servers that you have to deal with. Personally, I prefer using Pi-hole because that will do it for your entire network all at once. But if you don't have any type of home infrastructure and you want to do something about all the banner ads, download one of these host files that lists all those banner ad servers as it being at the address 127.0.0.1, and that'll clean up the problem for you. Let's see. I'm confused that statement. If the database server is up, you should still get a response from the ping command. Yes, Linux girl, you're exactly right. So if I ping the server and the server is up, I should get a response for that. However, that doesn't tell me if the database process itself is running. So let's say the database process running on the database server crashed. That port's no longer open and listening. Ping will tell me that server is accessible. But now when I go to run my utility, there's no port to talk to. Now I know, yeah, okay, I've got connectivity to that box. It's just the process isn't responding for some reason. So it's a great way to go through and kind of break things out. So I probably didn't clarify that when I said it. I apologize. Yes, especially if you're watching Chris. Oh, that could always be bad. Let's see. We got a bunch of folks jumping in, helping out with questions. Thank you so much for that. Let's see. This is a great session. Board member, training guy. Oh, would love to collab. Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. Cool. Let's see. We're already past the top of the hour. So let's just kind of jump here. I'm pretty sure I hit everything. So yeah, if you want to grab the slides, feel free. They're in the channel that is labeled as Fire-Content just below this one. But yeah, thank you for jumping in on this first session. We'll have some, certs and stuff like that that'll go out. There'll be a recording of this video that's going to be made available. Keith went through and created a single page that's going to archive all this stuff so that there'll be a nice index at the top once we have 3 or 4 of these created. So it'll be real easy to be able to jump in and find this. And that'll have a link to the video as well as a link to the slides. So you have access to all of that. But you may, for the folks that kind of hang out with us a lot, you may notice that we didn't use our regular webcast channel for this. That's actually a feature. So Fireside Fridays is its own section on our server now. This live chat isn't just for live chat. This live chat is for anybody who's taken the class that wants to come back later and ask questions. So those of you who, again, have been here before probably know I usually throw my email address at the end, and I have no problem with people emailing me. But I kind of want to use the chat session here for this because that way, if I'm tied up doing something or I'm busy and someone has a question, that opens up the opportunity for somebody else to be able to go through and answer that. Also, when I was developing this content with Emily and Herman, Emily and Herman actually got together and kind of worked on this stuff when I wasn't available on their own. And I was like, that's cool. I want to leave that possibility open when we start doing these live. So if folks want to bounce additional ideas off each other or come up with labs for each other, that's what that chat is there for. If you have content you come up with as part of doing that, please at me on Discord and we'll get that added into the content channel as well. Where can I find the recording, please? The recording is going to be in our in our YouTube channel. So if you go to the Active Countermeasures YouTube channel, we're going to have a whole section that's just these recordings. They'll also be posted to our website under the education section. You'll see a page for Fireside Fridays. All of it will get linked off of that as well. As far as when will it get posted? Hey, I'm going to invite the other folks to come back in on this session and we can go through and someone who knows more than I can go through and answer that question.
I think that would be Ryan or Megan would have the answer to that question of when the recording is available. But I don't think it takes that long anymore.
No, they're amazing.
Yeah.
They're amazing. What I notice is that within hours, if that, they post something that has the pre-show banter and has the entire stream in it, and then within a day they've already gone through and edited that up so that it's just the actual content, which is awesome. So
for this session, it's available on YouTube now. Right now, you can watch it on YouTube now. You can go back and rewatch it already, even though we're not done. But if you want to watch it back on Zoom again, the Zoom's got to process the recording. It takes maybe an hour or two. There's usually an email that gets sent out to everybody that says, hey, the recording's ready. Click here to come back and watch it. And you can watch it there as well. But probably the easiest way is just to go to YouTube.
Cool.
Awesome.
Hey, and Shelby, how did we land on the registrations? Do people have to register for each individual class? I seem to remember that's how we left it.
That is the way it is right now, but you can register for multiple things. So if you've only registered for this one and you want to go back and add more to it, go back to the registration page, and there's below the buttons there's a little text blurb that should say register for more, add more, or something like that. I forget exactly, but it brings up a little pop-up and it says all the ones that we currently have published as coming up, and you can check the box for the other ones that you want to register for.
Oh, perfect.
And I just threw a link to that Zoom page in the Discord, and I also pinned it, so it'll be there forever.
Will the link be the same? Yeah, I think we're using a reoccurring Zoom session for this.
Yes, yeah. That when you open the session, you usually get this window that's like Zoom calls it a lobby, and in there, that's where you see the join button on Zoom itself. There should be the most current one should be at the top, but if not, there's all listed out in that lobby section for you, so you can just hit the button that you want to watch. And usually that lobby will also have a button to watch a recording for a previous session. So once we get to next week's session, the recording for this week's session should be accessible from that lobby, as well as the join button to watch the upcoming session or the current one during that time. So it'll make more sense when you see it, but
Awesome.
it'll be
Thank
there.
Thank you, guys.
No. This is ACM team, anti-countermeasures, even though they are all family. Yeah. Thanks as always to the anti-siphon team. Hey, I have like no problem thanking the anti-siphon team too. As Eric said, we can be confusing sometimes because we kind of like are all the same thing, but we're not. So
Go out singing, "We are family."
Oh, no.
we'll let you do that, Bill.
Ah, I was
We'll
hoping
leave
for
that to
5-part
you.
harmony. Come on,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah.
You're the
we
one who
might,
does our capella. We'll leave that to you.
yeah, we might need special outfits for that. So.
That's true. And a disco ball.
Well, awesome. Thank you all for joining us. And thank you, Chris. That was really, really good. In fact, I learned a few things too. So I hope everyone else did as well.
Yeah. Yeah, happy to. Happy to. Yeah, and so next week we're going to be doing kind of similar, but on the Linux side. So that should be fun. And yeah, I think I have. Emily's asking, what's the drink today? Zombie brain juice. That's what keeps me running today. So today it's all about the brain juice. And since I just saw both Emily and HK posting in the channel, I'm going to toss this up one more time because I really appreciate all the help that they gave me. Again, Herman and Emily, let's all give them kudos for helping out on this. The content definitely improved dramatically having their help as part of this. So,
yeah,
Nice work, guys. Thank you.
yeah. I second that. Thank you. And also in Discord. I mean, they're actively in here helping out live,
yes.
as well as many other people. I mean, and I love how everyone just kind of jumps in that has the knowledge to help answer questions. So
Yeah.
it's appreciated.
Yeah. Yeah. I try to be a dick, but everybody else is too nice. So
It balances out.
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
Never give up trying, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. And I think we are done.
All right.
Awesome.
Yeah, Andy said it. Both my spinners are now dead, so I guess we're done. We can only go as long as the spinners are spinning. Once they stop, we have to stop too. I'm sorry, it's just the rules.
Yeah. Yeah. There's your sign, right?
Yep.
All right. Thanks, everybody. See you
Awesome.
next
Folks,
time.
take
everyone.
care.